To force change, there was always a cost. Rebellions have their price. For the Huguenots resisting the Catholic Church, the cost of change was steep for both Catholics and Protestants alike. After the Protestant Reformation, factions of Protestants began appearing all over Europe, one group namely in France called the Huguenots. The name Huguenots was given to the French Protestants in the early 16th century, mainly as a derogatory term used by their enemies. The true Huguenots were Calvinists living in southern and western Europe, but eventually became the term for all French Protestants. As this faction of Protestants slowly gained prominence, so did their hostility towards Catholics. Huguenots, like the other religious reformers of the time, felt that the Catholic Church needed a radical cleansing of its impurities, and that the Pope represented a worldly kingdom which sat in tyranny by abusing the power of God for its own means. As the Huguenots grew in population, they began to take action to tear down such a kingdom, becoming fiercer. Eventually, Huguenots began attacking Catholic priests and monks. Ancient relics and texts were destroyed, the bodies of saints exhumed and burned. In Bourges, Montauban, Orleans, and many other French cities, violent riots broke out where texts and altars were burned and torn down.
The Huguenots were now more than a religious sect, but a dangerous militia. Protestant preachers rallied a considerable army and cavalry. Military leaders such as Admiral Gaspard de Coligny and Henry of Navarre fortified cities and launched attacks in a crusade-like manner. For the next 3 decades, the Huguenots would pose a serious threat to Catholics. A series of spiritual conflicts followed. The French Wars of Faith raged from 1562 to 1598. However, Catholics were not the only victims of violence. In what became known as St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre of August 24th through October 3rd of 1572, Catholics killed thousands of Huguenots in Paris, and similar massacres happened in other towns within the following weeks. In all, over 7,000 Protestants were killed. Finally, however, the bloodshed was ended by Henry IV with the Edict of Nantes, which granted Huguenots substantial religious, political, and military freedoms. However, the tensions between Catholics and the Huguenots remained.
After King Henry's death, Henry's successor was much less tolerant to the Huguenots. Persecutions of Protestants began, and the Huguenots were forced to either convert to Catholicism or be subject to an assortment of unfavorable situations. First, it started just by the closing of Huguenot schools and exclusion from favored professions. However, it soon escalated into dragonnades, including the occupation and looting the homes of Huguenots using military troops. In 1685, King Louis issued the Edict of Fontainebleau, revoking the Edict of Nantes and declaring Protestantism illegal. The population of Huguenots slowly began decreasing, amassing to the thousands, while the remaining decided to rebel and fight back, which only increased the bloodshed. The result of this bloodshed was a Huguenot diaspora. French Protestants fled their homeland to places such as England, Ireland, Scotland, Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Russia, and some even to colonies in South Africa and North America. Persecutions of Protestants diminished in France after 1724, finally ending in the Edict of Versailles, often called the Edict of Tolerance, signed in 1787. 2 years later, with the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen of 1789, Protestants gained equal rights as citizens. However, the rift between Catholics and Protestants may still linger in this area today.